Good evening from Townsend, Tennessee. I'm about to head over to Cades Cove. We're gonna go do this. It's Spooky Smokies at Cades Cove. We'll take an evening walk with a ranger to learn about spooky creatures and stories of Cades Cove. So, without further, I don't know. So I'm gonna leave the gas station, go down the road a little bit into Cades Cove, and we're gonna follow along a ranger. I'll leave you here. We're not gonna take him. We're not bringing him into Cades Cove. All right, without further ado, we say let the adventure begin. Can you talk?
Let the adventure begin.
I didn't have running into Freddy on my bingo card for today, but I needed to stop at this KOA to use the restroom, so I think we should get out of here and head over to Cades Cove over here on the left. We've got the Great Smoky Mountains National Park sign to the right. We got a little bit of color here on Saturday, October 18th. It's just me on this trip. The kids are getting some packing done as we're gonna be heading down to Florida. So I figured I'd just run over here real quick and capture this so you guys could watch. Passing by the Townsend Y. And we could go left to get to Gatlinburg, but we're gonna take a right and we should be at the Cades Cove campground in about 14 minutes. I'm noticing some more colors as we get closer to Cades Cove. We're gonna go through the tunnel. I'm kind of excited to hear some of the different stories about spooky creatures in Cades Cove. I'm assuming it might include bats and maybe spiders. I guess we'll find out some more about some different things from a ranger. Definitely a lot of people coming out of Cades Cove. They do close down the loop at sunset. But again, we're gonna be doing a walk, so we won't be driving through Cades Cove. We're gonna go maybe explore. I don't know how far we're gonna walk. I guess we'll figure that out when we get there. We just passed by the campground on the left. I could go over there. I'm looking for the orientation shelter. I'm not sure if it's this one up on the left or it's the one behind the campground store, as far as what they consider the orientation shelter. Either way, I'm gonna come up here and I wanted to show you where you can get a parking pass for the day for $5. There's no cost to enter the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, but if you're going to be parked for more than 15 minutes, you need to come over and get a parking tag. It is $5 for the entire day, and it looks like this that you can just put into your windshield before you go do any activities inside the park. And I'm not quite sure if they consider this the orientation shelter, or again, it's over at the campground. I see a bunch of people up here, so let's go see what's going on.
In the 1800s, we obviously see a boom and an influx of immigrants. And a lot of the immigrants around the Appalachian Mountains are Scots-Irish. So with the colonial Protestant New Englanders in those colonies, they don't really want to associate all that much with Roman Catholic traditions, but we start seeing some influence with harvest festivals. So we talked about the Celtic harvest festivals. They start adopting the harvest mentality more so than the traditional Roman All Saints' Day celebrations. So in these mountains now, we celebrate it as what we know of now, right? Traditions of candy, traditions of trick-or-treating, but it actually all dates back to the ancestors of these mountains, the Scots-Irish. So, talked a little bit about the culture and the history. What are some spooky creatures you may think of when you think of Halloween?
Look at
Ghost. What'd you say?
Black cats.
Black cats. Yeah. What are some bats? What are some you might see here? Spiders. Yeah. A lot of these creatures are what? Are they active during the day or during the night? Night. So that means they're nocturnal, exactly. So we're going to touch on some of the nocturnal creatures that pop up in Cades Cove, and that's where Ranger Sarah is going to take over.
So they did start a little bit early, catching a sunset and following Ranger Sarah over here.
We're on the lookout for bats, so hopefully it's warm enough, but keep an eye out above you guys. If you see any, let me know.
Crowd behind me is murmuring that perhaps there's a zombie walking up ahead.
2 of them last night. I can't remember.
Yeah, we have a lot here. All right, this seems like the perfect bat spot. So I'll stand here. If you guys want to just kind of stand around me and just be ready in case those bikes come through to move if you need to. Get the beautiful mountain view and horses. All right, so we have some bats flying around, which is awesome. They're very cool. So have all of you seen bats prior to tonight? Is this anyone's first time seeing them? Yeah. So we've got quite a few bat species in this park, and I'll get into that. But I love talking about bats, especially this time of year, because it's one of the classic Halloween animals, right? If you look at decorations all over, you know, Walmart, anywhere you shop, you're going to see a lot of bats. And so the reason for that kind of goes back to what Karsten was talking about at the last stop. They had these Celtic festivals, and they were having big bonfires. And at those bonfires, you guys probably have experienced this as well. Insects are drawn in by that light. All of our bats in this area are insect eaters. So then the bats are coming to that area to eat all those insects. So you start to associate bats with Halloween and bonfires and that kind of spooky time of year. Obviously, bats are kind of dark and mysterious as a nocturnal animal. Then you also have like medieval folklore and things like Bram Stoker's Dracula that come out. You start to see people, you know, associating bats with vampires and more of, you know, that kind of thing. So we've got 11 different species of bats in this park. And I'll show you this before it gets darker. So hopefully some of you have seen this before. It's kind of a famous diagram. I studied biology, that's what my degree is in. And so bats are a mammal. They're our only mammal that is capable of true flight. So we have flying squirrels, we have things like that, but they're not actually flying, right? They're gliding. So if you look at our bats flying around us right now, it's really cool. They fly just like a bird does, right? And so what's neat about bats, you know, if you look at my arm, we've got the exact same bones. They're just shaped different. So when we look at our bat, they've got a little humerus, they've got a radius and ulna, they've got all their fingers. And you'll notice, obviously, their fingers are kind of webbed together. That's what's making the wing. The fun thing about bats is their thumb is separate. If you think about like monkeys and us and things that have that opposable thumb, bats kind of have that too, which is really cool. So if you've ever been to the zoo, that's where I think of this a lot. You've seen like maybe the flying foxes or some of those really big bats. You'll see them kind of like clawing around, and they use that thumb to move. So they don't have to fly to move. That's their easiest way to move, but they can use that kind of opposable thumb to get around, which is kind of neat. And some of them have like a little suction cup or like disc on it. So it kind of helps them grip as they're moving around. So you might think about, you know, we've talked about like the flying fox. That's the biggest bat in the world. That wingspan is about as big as me. Then the smallest bat, I actually brought an example. We don't have it in the Smokies. It's probably hidden in my bag. There it is. Very tiny. So the Cades hognose bat is our smallest bat. Flying fox, about my size. Most of our bats are kind of in the middle. So right about here. And so you can see, depending on the size of the bat, obviously the wings are going to differ. And wing size is a lot of times determined by how long those bones are. So longer finger bones, longer wings. What's the other thing you guys notice looking at this bat? Ears, yeah. So it has giant ears. And so bats use echolocation. So that's what we're going to get into next. So bats have really tiny eyes for a nocturnal animal, right? Like most nocturnal animals, you think about like an owl, has like huge eyes, way bigger than ours. Bats have these little tiny eyes. So they have to use something else to find those insects that they're hunting, right? So they're using what's called echolocation. So essentially what they do is they emit a sound that we can't hear, and it's like a little clicking noise. It's like, but higher frequency than that. And so they're doing that little click, and it's bouncing off everything around them, and it's helping them find whatever it is they're looking for. So what we're gonna do is try our little magic bat box and see if we can hear the bats that we just saw. And so essentially what this will do is it'll pick up on the clicking. And like as they get closer, it gets faster, basically. And so, yeah, like as they fly around, you'll hear it kind of speed up. And so that's kind of them like honing in on the insect, right? Like as they're getting closer, they're clicking a lot faster. Bats have different clicks. So if you're a bat expert, you can identify the bats based on the number of clicks. Give them a second. So we have 11 different species of bats in this park. 7 of them spend the year here, 4 of them migrate. So winter here is obviously cold, but not as cold as like other northern parts of the United States. So one of the big struggles that bats are facing right now is white nose syndrome. You guys have heard of that. So basically it's a fungus that gets on like their nose and their mouth and their wings, and it makes them all itchy essentially, and it kind of agitates them during hibernation. Here's a good one. And so basically it like wakes them up in the winter, and they're moving around and they're using up their energy that they had accumulated throughout the fall. And then they're flying out of their cave or den or wherever they're at, and then they're looking for insects at a time of year where there's no insects. So they end up starving, and that's one of the big struggles they're facing. So to kind of mitigate that, we have caves all over this park, and they're made of limestone. That's like our dominant rock in this area, especially in Cades Cove. And so those caves are blocked off. So we can't go into them, but obviously the bats can get out. So the cool thing with this is obviously bats are facing a lot of, struggles with white nose syndrome, but we still get to see them even when we're not damaging their habitat, which I really love. Do you guys want to listen for a second or keep going?
Were the caves open at one point?
They used to be, yeah. So we have, if you all driven the loop at some point? Okay, so there's a cave, it's called Gregory's Cave. You can still walk to it, you can go partially in it, but not fully. There's a big metal thing that's blocking you guys and me. But as you're going through the loop, there's like the S curves, and then there's a gate. And so it's, if you walk up that road with that gate, there's a cave back there. And it's maybe 0.25 round trip. So if you guys ever want to see a cave in Cades Cove, that is one you can go to. It's kind of cool. You guys ready to keep moving? So bats are obviously one nocturnal animal that we've got here, but there are some others. So this next animal I'm going to talk about is one that we don't always see at night, but we hear a lot at night.
So I've done lots of bike rides through Cades Cove, but this is the latest that I've ever
Yeah,
been on the loop.
it's pretty cool at night, and there's more bats above us.
We're catching a beautiful sunset here in Cades Cove on a Saturday night in October. Weather feels great. Just gonna keep our head on a swivel for any bears or wildlife off in the distance. Starting to lose visibility.
Hopefully we get some stars. We're gonna try to look at them too. So I gave you a clue about this animal, that it's one you commonly hear at night. I don't know that we're gonna hear it tonight. We can definitely hear some animals making noise, but this one's a little bigger than those. Any ideas what animal I'm talking about? Coyotes. So obviously when thinking about Halloween, I don't really think about coyotes. I think about wolves. I think about werewolves specifically. So if you all think to kind of the legend of the werewolf, right? It's a man that in the full moon is turning into a wolf. It's kind of this idea of transformation, turning into something other than yourself, kind of the dark side of human nature. That's really, I think, what's kind of a fun part about Halloween. And so we currently have coyotes in the park. We do not have wolves in the park, but we used to. And so we had the red wolf here in this area. So we've got two different wolf species in North America. One is the red wolf, one is the gray wolf. And so have any of you seen gray wolves in the wild? Maybe at Yellowstone, Montana, that area. They're pretty common out there, or getting more common. We don't have gray wolves or red wolves today in this area of the country. They are very similar species, but they look a little bit different. And you might guess why. The color is the main difference. Gray wolves are a little bit bigger. Red wolves have kind of a reddish color right on their ears and neck. And so that's kind of their distinguishing characteristic. They're about 80 pounds at their biggest. So German Shepherd size. The one dog that's walking around, bigger than that one. So they're a decent sized animal, but they are critically endangered. So they're not one that you will see in the wild today, most likely. So if any of you been to Alligator River National Wildlife Refuge in North Carolina, probably not, I've never been there. So it's kind of more towards the coast. Yeah, so that is the only place in the country that there are red wolves in the wild today. So basically the backstory on them, they were listed as endangered in 1986 or 87. And essentially the reason they became endangered is, like a lot of predators, the United States government decided, hey, if you kill predators, we'll give you money. There's bounties on them. So farmers and other people were incentivized basically to kill predators because it helped cattle ranchers and things like that. So that's why we wiped out a lot of the predators in this country. And so with that, you know, they eventually became endangered. They got listed with the Endangered Species Act. And then they decided the population was so low, they were going to collect all of the wild red wolves and put them all in one area. And so that happened to be in North Carolina. And then they decided they were going to reintroduce them. And so the Smokies was one of those spots, which was pretty cool. So back in 1991, they reintroduced red wolves to the Smokies. They released one family in 91. They released a family in Cades Cove in 92 and another family in Tremont in 92. So do any of you remember that? I don't know if anyone's from this area. Yeah, you saw them? Cool. And there's photos of them in Cades Cove. So it's kind of a neat thing. I wasn't in this area at that time, but I would have loved to see it. So they tried to reintroduce them, and people obviously had a lot of reservations, right? Because the whole reason we remove predators in the first place is because they eat cattle and they eat other things like your pets or whatever. And so people were not thrilled that they were reintroduced, and those fears ended up being really warranted because undoubtedly the coyotes or the wolves moved right out of the park. So we had them radio collared, and one showed up in North Knoxville, so really far. I live in Blount County today. There was one in Blount County that died during antifreeze. So they went outside of the park looking for food, even though there's a lot of food here. So that was one reason that they didn't do that well. The other reason was they had 40 pups while they were here, and they all got parvovirus. So I don't know if you've experienced that with a pet maybe, but it's a pretty serious disease, and untreated, it kills the animal. And so they had all these puppies, but they weren't surviving. What's the virus? Parvo? Yeah. So they decided in 1998 that this just wasn't a successful experiment. They were really hoping it would go better. It didn't. So they pulled all the red wolves out except one, which I think is a really fun fact. So they had radio collars on them. They were able to recapture them all, but there was one that they weren't able to recapture. So there's still one lurking about. And then they moved them all to that wildlife refuge in North Carolina. And so today there is about 17 wolves. In captivity in the United States, there's 280 individuals roughly. So basically it's an animal that's like functionally extinct, right? Like it's not out in the wild. It's really just kind of these like zoo populations. We have them at the Knoxville Zoo if you guys have been there. So it's a really cool species, but they're not doing that great. And one of the reasons for that is coyotes. If any of you were living in this area or other parts of the US, coyotes basically started out west and they migrated essentially everywhere else. So in the 1980s, coyotes moved into this area and they started competing basically directly with those wolves that were introduced. They eat the same things, they can have puppies together. So it was like a direct impact on that wolf population. So today what's kind of cool is people will see coyotes in Cades Cove and other places in this park, and they'll say, that coyote looks kind of red, you know, like it'll have kind of like reddish coloration. And so they're always wondering if maybe it's a hybridized animal, like maybe descended from those red wolves, maybe that didn't get pulled out. And honestly, it could be, we're not testing them, but it's kind of unlikely, right? Those wolves were removed 27 years ago. So even if they are a little bit red wolf, it's probably really diluted in that population. So there's a chance they've got apart, but maybe not. What's cool about coyotes too is they can actually breed with dogs, good and bad. So that's also going to influence their color. So our coyotes today, we've got a pretty big population. We don't do studies on them, so we don't know exactly how many are in the park. I can tell you we've had multiple families by the Cable Mill area since I've worked here. I've been here about 4 years. And so coyotes are usually maxing out about 40 pounds. So they're not super big, but they're really a generalist species. They're out at night, they eat almost anything. So they survive really well in this habitat. They're eating, you know, squirrels and rabbits and small animals, basically. Do you guys want to see? I brought a coyote pelt for y'all to see. And I also brought a skull. So I think I'll just pass it if you guys want to start. Do you guys have any wildlife questions while we're passing that around? Because I'm happy to answer any of those too. And they don't have to be related to nighttime or anything like that. I think part of what helped coyotes is they're smaller. So they don't need as much food. They're out at night. Wolves are kind of out like at dusk and dawn. So they have like slightly different, they compete with each other, but they have slightly different habits. I think it's just enough different that, you know, and the genetics are different too. So that'll help one versus the other. So she asked about elk. So we reintroduced elk on the North Carolina side of the park. Hopefully you all have seen those or maybe can head over that way to see them because they're in their rut right now. So it's really cool. You can hear them bugling. And so the elk population, we currently don't have any that are staying on the Tennessee side. We've had males come into Townsend, Tennessee, so just the town right out over the mountains, but they don't stay because there's no females yet. In the last year, I've seen photos of a male up by Kauai, so up on Newfound Gap Road. But again, there was no females in that area, so he went back. So I think eventually, you know, if that population does well, we'll see them move to the Tennessee side. But we're kind of a little bit a ways away from that, I think, at this point. We do a survivability study with all of the elk, which is really cool. So they radio collar them. So basically every calf that's born, if we find it, we get a collar on it. And that's a program with UT. I'm not sure if there's any other schools, but I know UT is part of it. So they're basically looking at calf survival and looking at how long, you know, they make it, basically. One of the animals that we, just as a park service, are worried about with rabies is bats. We don't really worry about, like, possums don't carry it. Like, a lot of the animals that people have, like, folklore about them carrying rabies don't actually carry rabies, but bats are one that do carry rabies. So I'll just give you guys an example. I used to work at Grand Teton, and we had bats in one of our cabins. And so everybody had to get rabies shots that lived in that cabin because they weren't sure if they had been bitten because they were sleeping in a cabin full of bats. So that is definitely a thing that we do worry about and think about. Did everyone get to see this? No. Right now in this park, we've got about 1,900 black bears estimated. Obviously, we didn't count them all. So pretty big population. They're doing really well, which is great for all of us to see them. 1,900, it's almost 2,000. Yeah, and so Cades Cove has the highest density of black bears anywhere in the park. And really that's just nice open fields, good food sources, so it's good habitat for them, it's lots of things to eat. Shenandoah has had some issues with like mange and things like that with black bears. I have yet to see that here, so hopefully that continues. So they seem to be doing well from what I can tell. Yeah, so cubs are born in January in the den. And they're really small and like hairless and kind of helpless. And then they come out with mom like April or May. Typically we see them. So we typically see moms with 2 or 3 here. It's pretty rare to see just 1. 2 is the most common number of cubs that you guys will see. And so they stay with mom for 1.5 years, essentially. So the summer of their 2nd year, they usually leave in about August. So, and that's always a sad time, because she's kicking them away and they don't want to leave and the whole thing. But Yeah, exactly. They get a little annoyed with them for sure. So it's not like a true hibernation like the bats, but it's torpor is what it's called. But it's essentially like, you know, slowing a metabolism, and they're staying in a den. A lot of times here in this park, which is really cool, they sleep in trees. So we have these really cool old oak trees that are kind of hollowed out in the middle, and they'll like climb into those and sleep and have their babies in the tree, which is really, really neat. So there's actually, if you guys go around Cades Cove, right before the Tipton cabin, so we're after Dan Lawson, but before Tipton, on the left-hand side, there's a really cool old oak tree, and that has a big hole in it. And we had a mom with cubs in there this past year. So that was kind of neat. Awesome, all right. In a normal world that's not Cades Cove, they should be active at dawn and dusk. In a place like this where they're kind of used to people and there's a lot of competition, we see them the whole day. So, what'd you say? They're out at night too. Yeah. So I've seen them at all hours of the day here, and I think that's just because our population's so high. But usually it's that dawn and dusk time is when they should be out. But I see them at noon when I'm driving around. So, yeah. You guys ready? I think Ranger Karsten is gonna lead us. Yeah, they are out all day long, which is great because people get to see them. So I mean, it's a cool thing, but it's definitely unique to, I think, these more busy areas. The only population we're actively reducing in the park is feral hogs. Okay. And so they hunt those in the winter and remove those just because they're an invasive species. So that's the only one where we're trying to like cull them and bring that population down. But bears,
over from like early settlers.
Yeah, so what's cool with those is they're the hybrid species. I don't know if cool is the right word. I think it's cool. So it's like a Eurasian wild boar that people had at like hunting ranches mixed with your typical like farm pig, basically is what we have in this park. They're big and they're kind of fuzzy. They look different. It depends on, like I've seen one that's kind of lightly furred and kind of grayish. I've seen ones with like a lot of fur. So they vary. I saw one in the cove during the middle of the day when they shouldn't be out. So that happens. They're super invasive. So what they breed exponentially. So they can have like 13 plus piglets. Wow. Yeah. So that's the main issue.
But are they aggressive towards people? Like,
they can be. The big thing with them is they root around and create wallows. So they basically like destroy habitat for other species like salamanders and wildflowers and a lot of the things that kind of make the Smokies special. So that's really why we're trying to remove them. And we have no plans to bring elk to this side of the park. Like if it happens naturally, great. If it doesn't, we're fine with that.
So cryptid is a animal, or it can be a humanoid kind of figure that is classified by mythology or pop culture, but not like scientifically recognized. So two of my favorite cryptid stories from around here. One comes from Point Pleasant, West Virginia. It's the Mothman story. So the Mothman, he's gonna become really popular with like X-Files episodes, and the Mothman Prophecies, I think, was the 2002 film. So that guy was reported originally in 66. He was reported by two couples. They were said to have seen a huge flying creature with big red beady eyes, 10-foot wingspan, flying over the roof of their car. The local sheriff chalked it up to just a big red-headed sandhill crane type of thing, because they're pretty big, they have red heads, so red eyes make sense. But then he was later credited for a falling of the Silver Bridge and killing 46 people in 67. And ever since then, there's been tons of stories and tons of credits to his mischievousness. And there's even Mothman festivals that you can go to in September, just like there are Bigfoot festivals. So now, if you turn your attention up to the sky, I have some stories to tell about this sky. What are some things you notice up in the sky above us? You can blurt out the obvious, don't worry. Stars. Yeah, what else? There's fog. There's this big flying thing over there. What's that? A plane. Yeah, so I'm not going to use my laser pointer right now because I'm not supposed to point it at planes. That would distract them. But if you follow my arm right here to this star, maybe you can see it. That's Polaris right there. Do you guys know what Polaris is? I'll circle it once the plane passes. Do you guys know what Polaris is?
So there's a few highlights of the Spooky Smokies. They have another one on the 25th, so they have 2 different Saturdays. You can come to an event like this. They also do Cades Cove night hikes on Friday night with a ranger. So I know it might have been a little hard to see everything. We mainly saw a bunch of bats kind of in the distance flying around. Didn't see any bears or anything like that, which honestly, it was so dark, I'm kind of glad that we didn't stumble upon a bear. It was hard to see my hand right in front of me. Again, I've driven and rode a bike through the Cades Cove 11-mile loop. We didn't go too far. We went down the road just a bit, talked a little bit, and then came back, but it's really neat to be out here in the middle of the night. The stars are fantastic. I did my best to capture them with a few pictures, but it just really doesn't do it justice. So weather was great. I'm gonna head back home, but just wanted to come over here and walk around with them so you could be a fly on the wall and listen to the different creatures in Cades Cove. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, simply like it before you leave. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments, but that's gonna wrap up this video. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you on the next adventure.
Thank you.